Ladies and gentlemen, in this Red Game Telecom video, let's talk about the end of console generations as we know it, as well as exclusive titles for the Project Scorpio virtual reality devices. Now, you may recall that Phil Spencer, as well as other folks at Microsoft, have told us that all games, all accessories, will be unified across multiple Xbox devices. So in short, if you were to buy a new Dead Rising game, it will work on the Xbox One, Xbox One S, and of course Project Scorpio, and future games will also have similar compatibility. But Aaron Greenberg, in a recent interview with Engadget, has clarified a few more points. I'll read out his quote. The idea was, how can we innovate with hardware without sacrificing compatibility? Generally, when you bring a new iteration of console hardware, you lose compatibility with their games and accessories. So we're saying, if you bought games and accessories for your Xbox One, or go buy an Xbox One S, those games and those accessories are going to work on Project Scorpio. When you think about backwards compatibility in our games lineup, we want games to know that when you're ready to upgrade to Scorpio, that content will go with them. That's our promise and commitment around compatibility. The next thing was, are we going to make games exclusively for Project Scorpio? And we said we're not going to have console exclusive games for Project Scorpio. It's one ecosystem, whether you have an Xbox One S or a Project Scorpio. Rather interestingly, have you noticed they've not mentioned the original Xbox there? They're really trying to push you towards the new systems, aren't they? Well, I don't really mind that. It's marketing after all. We don't want anyone to get left behind. Now, with the power and capabilities, we'll have to be able to go to high fidelity virtual reality. In that space, we don't think of that as a console gaming. We think of that as high fidelity virtual reality. So with the VR experiences, those will be new things that you will get on Project Scorpio. So to cut through the mustard there, he's saying that regular games will work across any Xbox. However, in their mind, virtual reality is not Project Scorpio. Project Scorpio is a means to facilitate and power virtual reality experiences. So in their mind, it's like, well, the original Xbox just doesn't have the power to, power, let's say the Oculus Rift or whatever ended up plugging into Project Scorpio. The rumours have it that HTC Vive apparently, but we'll have to wait. And you can almost think of that as like an add-on to the console. So I guess if you read between the lines, there's no way that the original Xbox can power it. I mean, the PlayStation 4 is barely going to be able to power the PSVR, so that's why one of the main reasons I'm hearing Neo is going to be released. And obviously the thing about PSVR is it doesn't have the pixel fidelity, the high number of pixels as, let's say, the Oculus Rift or the HTC Vive, so it's going to be even harder to power one of those devices, and that's really why Project Scorpio is going to have to be exclusive to those devices, because otherwise the original Xbox just doesn't have the horsepower. So we always get asked quite regularly amongst ourselves on various message boards, will there be another console generation? What will the PlayStation 3 be like? What will the PlayStation 4 be like? And you can of course say that about what would the GameCube be like, what would the Wii be like, what will the successors of the Wii be like, and we keep asking ourselves this, is there going to be a point where this stops? Aaron Greenberg believes that this is probably going to be the last console generation. He says, I think it is. For us, we think the future is without console generations. We think that the ability to build a library, a community to be able to iterate with that hardware is a pretty big bet for what we made on Project Scorpio. We're basically saying this is not a new generation. Everything you have continues to work, continues forward, and it works. And we think of this as a family of devices, but we'll have to see. We're going to learn from this, we're going to see how that goes. So far, I'd say based upon reaction, there appears to be a lot of demand and interest around Project Scorpio, which I'd concur with personally, and we think that it's going to be a pretty big success. If the games and content deliver, which I think they will do, I think we will have changed the way we think about the future of console gaming. It's a pretty interesting one, this, because it's going to be a bit weird. So, Obviously, there is a lot of crossover in terms of performance between the Xbox One and the Xbox One S. We know that there's not that much difference in terms of raw performance between the two systems. You're looking at around 90 G-flops. Let's just call it 100 for sake of ease in this video. Which is, you know, it's not insubstantial. It's okay, but it's not exactly a revolution, is it? But let's be honest, between Project Scorpio and the original Xbox One, there's a pretty big gap. But most of that will get swallowed up with higher resolution. So for example, if developers are even going at 1440p, let alone 4K, a lot of the GPU performance will be swallowed up just quickly, especially if you start to push towards from 30 FPS to 60 FPS at 1440p. You can almost say that all of the GPU advantage the Scorpio will have over the original Xbox One has just disappeared. But let's not get bogged down with G-flops and T-flops too much in this video. Instead, cast your mind forward to Project Scorpio 2, or whatever the hell it ends up being called. What happens then? Like, how far in the future are you going to have to go before the original Xbox is just not enough to play games that we have now? And then when will that compatibility chain end? That's my question. I'm not saying that he's wrong, because ultimately I don't think anyone can really predict where the future is lying. I mean, it's just impossible. You can make assumptions, you can make guesses, but even the folks who are creating new APIs, the folks who are designing new architectures for CPUs and GPUs, they can only make some guesses. I mean, after all, most of the time when you're designing a new architecture, you're doing it with the foresight of, let's say, 3 years in the future. So all companies come together and they'll say, hey, we're making a new API, or hey, this is where the games are going to be going in the future. And that's why Microsoft, that's why Sony, that's why Nintendo, they will speak to developers and they'll say to them, okay, one of the classic examples is Mark Cerny. When he was developing the PlayStation 4, when he was designing the physical hardware, he was talking to developers, and that would be the third-party teams, that would be the Ubisofts, the Electronic Arts, that would be Konami's, and anyone else who develops for their system, and of course first-party studios as well, and saying, okay, what went wrong with the PlayStation 3? What did you like? What didn't you like? And let's try to improve that for the next generation, and Microsoft do the same. The problem is, how much further are we going to be able to go down the compatibility road before the Xbox One's current CPU is just not able to cut the muster, before the GPU isn't able to go forward? One theory that I had is that it's not necessarily going to be compatibility, it's going to be almost like a version, so it's almost going to be like PC specs, but then you're going very much like a PC. And you might also risk upsetting individuals who said, hey, well, you're always going to have backwards compatibility, but then let's say at that point the original Xbox, and I'm just throwing out a number here, is like, the original Xbox One is like 8 years, 9 years, 10 years old. Well, can you realistically expect that system to still be able to output games, new games? So I guess it depends on how all of that goes. Personally, I don't have anything against a consistent family of devices. I think that could be kind of cool, but I wonder where there's going to be a threshold, or if there is going to be a threshold, or perhaps at some point or another there's going to be streaming. So for example, I'm just throwing it out there because obviously none of this has been confirmed, but it's possible that to play games on the original Xbox, they hope in, let's say, 4, 5, 6 years time, the average internet connection is fast enough so that they can offset some of that to like cloud computing. But then some people believe that's where all gaming's going, it's going to be cloud, which personally I'm not a fan of. I know some people love the idea of cloud computing and it does have some advantages, but I frickin' hate the idea of games as a service. It's one of the reasons I've not really invested in PlayStation Now, to be honest. I don't like the idea of games as a service. It already pisses me off enough that games are going pretty digital on computers. I mean, Steam isn't as bad, But even then, I don't like the idea that I don't own a physical copy. That's why typically 90% of the time, if it's on console, hell, I'd say 95% of the time now, I will buy the physical version of the game. Because you never know what's going to happen. It's like your console could break and, let's say 10 years time, they stop supporting PlayStation 4 and you've bought all your games digitally. It's possible your PS4 could break, Sony could no longer support the PS4, they could go bankrupt for all you know. You never know what's going to happen. And then you're screwed, because then you can't download those games again, or their server could stop responding, or whatever. And then you're not basically able to play your current games library. And that kind of sucks. But that's been a concern we've had since, like, the PlayStation 3 and Steam. So, anyway, I think I've got slightly off topic with this video, haven't I? Anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed it. Normal stuff. Like if you've liked it. Subscribe if you want more of it, and that type of thing. Anyway, I'm going to get going, so take care of yourselves. Bye for now.